Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bad Actor Non-Ferrous Mining Introductory Press Conference. I'm Scott Beauchamp. I'm the Policy Director for the Friends of the Boundary Waters. It is my honor and pleasure today to introduce Friends of the Boundary Waters Executive Director, Chris Knott. Chris? Great.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, everyone. As Scott mentioned, I'm Chris Knott, the Executive Director of Friends of the Boundary Waters Wilderness, and it's my pleasure to welcome you on this beautiful spring day here. Friends of the Boundary Waters Wilderness for over 40 years has protected, preserved, and restored the boundary waters. And today we do that through three program areas. They're pro-wilderness, pro-people, and pro-community. For the wilderness, we've been battling the two mines, Twin Metals and Polymet, for over a decade now, and we're winning that battle. For the people, we have our No Boundaries, the Boundary Waters program that connects children from all across Minnesota to the boundary waters through educational programs and scholarships for wilderness canoe trips. And for the community, we understand that Ely, Grand Marais, the North Shore, Gunflint Trail, and the Iron Range need to thrive in order for the wilderness to truly be protected. So we support bills and other policies that make those communities stronger and thrive here. And so we are here today to introduce the Bad Actor Bill. This is a targeted and common sense bill. And it is very, very simple. So it is, if you want to open a copper sulfide mine in Minnesota, the most toxic industry in the world, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, you cannot be a bad actor. And this is a very common sense thing. So what is a bad actor? A bad actor is a corporation that in the last 15 years has been convicted of a violation of an environmental law, either here in the United States or abroad, or has entered a settlement either here or abroad for environmental violations, or has been convicted of corruption, bribery, and other bad behaviors either here or abroad. And so this is common sense. We do it in other areas. We don't allow people convicted of certain crimes to operate a daycare. We don't allow people convicted of certain crimes to own a gun. And those are common sense. And here we have the most dangerous industry to the environment, and we don't want bad actors operating the most toxic industry in the world, where we have some of our most clean water in Minnesota. So let's talk about one bad actor in particular that wants to open a copper sulfide mine in Minnesota, and that is Glencore. Glencore owns Polymet. And who is Glencore? Glencore is an international pariah. It was founded decades ago by a gentleman named Mark Rich, who is dealing with the Ayatollah of Iran and apartheid South Africa. He had to flee the United States to avoid conviction. And where are we today? Right now, here we have the then CEO of Glencore, Ivan Glasenberg, shaking hands with Vladimir Putin. And so Vladimir Putin awarded Glencore, the owner of Polymet that wants to open a copper sulfide mine here in Minnesota, the Order of Friendship. Today, Glencore is still doing business with Putin, even in the midst of this war with Ukraine. So this is the type of corporation that we do not want in the United States, here in Minnesota, operating a copper sulfide mine. So we say no to Glencore, no to Putin, and yes to good government here. So in between these violations from the founding to operating with Putin, Glencore has a history of environmental violations. In the last 15 years, it has fines for environmental violations totaling more than $10 million. It used child labor in Africa. It has violated U.S. labor laws, and it's been deemed a bad place, a bad employer by the U.S. steelworkers. So that's what we have with Glencore, a bad actor that should not be operating here in Minnesota. So we're saying no to bad actors, yes to good government, and yes to clean air and water. And it is my great privilege right now to introduce the Senate author of the Bad Actor Bill, Senator Jen McEwen of Duluth. So Jen, please come.
Thank you very much, Chris. Good morning, everybody. I'm State Senator Jen McEwen. I represent Duluth in the Minnesota State Senate, and I'm very proud to be the lead author in the Senate of this Bad Actor Bill. And we heard a wonderful summary of the bill from Chris of Friends of the Boundary Waters Wilderness. He summed it up very well. We have, unfortunately, some of the worst corporate actors in the world looking at Northeast Minnesota right now as a possibility for exploitation. These are bad actors that have been involved in environmental degradation around the world, millions of dollars of fines for environmental destruction, child labor violations in the Democratic Republic of Congo, labor busting, anti-worker practices around the world. These are not the type of corporations that we want to do business with in Minnesota. And we certainly do not want them setting up shop upstream on the St. Louis River and destroying our watersheds in Lake Superior. So, I think being the state senator from Duluth in particular, I have our community has a real stake in this living downstream. We drink the water, we live there. The water is us. It means our economy, it means our public health, it means our identity as Duluthians and as people who take pride in where we live in northeastern Minnesota, amongst that beautiful boreal forest and the clean water in our rivers and our lakes. And it's just so crucial to us to have this check and balance, a very common sense check and balance, to not have these corporate bad actors coming into our community, dividing our community, and setting us up for a race to the bottom. We deserve better than that. We can do so much better than that. And so I'm very proud to be the lead author of this bill in the Senate. I hope that we'll be able to really garner some real good support, bipartisan support, I hope, because this is, again, a very common sense sort of a background check for corporations. If we're talking about even considering this type of industry in northern Minnesota that has a terrible record around the world for pollution, for labor practices, all sorts of bad actors, then we need to have this check in our laws to make sure that we're protected, that Minnesotans are protected, that our clean water is protected. So with that, we'll take some questions.
All right, I'll see if we have any questions. Let's see. Pete's also watching it. Let's see. All right, I can't see the chat here. Hang on, what are some of the laws that they would have to break?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that the question is, what are some of the laws that they would have to break that would then direct our agencies to not issue permits or to change permits or to be able to act to protect Minnesotans? Some of those things would be the examples we've cited. So involvement in child labor around the world, involvement in corruption or fraud. And you'll see, if you take a look at the language of the bill, and I can let Chris speak to this as well, but there's a whole enumeration of possible bad acts that if these corporations have been involved in them, or their subsidiaries, their connected corporations throughout the world, and have run into trouble with tribal governments or other national governments in the world for their acts against labor, against the environment, then our own government can look at that, and they are directed then to say, no, we're not going to have you set up shop in our state and be able to do harm to our people and our environment and our clean water. So do you have anything to add to that, Chris?
Sure. I think Senator McEwen explained it very well there. So these laws are state, federal, tribal, and foreign laws that deal with protecting natural resources. So those would be our laws to protect clean air, clean water, and for protecting the soil. And those would apply to European laws or other foreign laws dealing with that. And there are also laws that deal with corruption and bribery. So for example, a Glencore official had a suitcase full of money and went around the world bribing government officials to get certain natural resources contracts. That would be a violation of laws in African countries as well as the UK and Canada and the United States. And that would be something that would also be a violation that would be within the embrace of this bill as well. So those are the types of laws, the types of violations. And in fact, Glencore over the last 3 years has over 700 identified environmental incidents. And so that's the type of behavior that we're very, very concerned with. And over the last 15 years, Glencore has $10 million in fines for environmental violations. So those violations are part of what would be covered by this bill here.
All right, let's see if there are any more questions.
I think we have another question here.
Are there any similar laws in other states that have been enacted that are similar to this law?
Sure. This law builds on two foundational approaches. One is a longstanding approach that goes back over decades to keep organized crime out of solid waste. And so in various federal bills, there's elements to keep organized crime out of solid waste and hazardous waste. So you see that in the federal Superfund law and the federal law, the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, that keeps certain bad actors out of the hazardous waste and solid waste industries. And similarly, we have on a somewhat different basis in Montana, there's a state law there designed to keep bad actors out. And so we're building on that deals specifically with mining. So we're building on that state law in Montana and that longstanding federal approach in our federal solid and hazardous waste laws. So this is not a radical approach. This is a very common sense, pro-good government approach and pro-good good business approach that everyone should support. People involved in business, people involved in good government, and people that are concerned with clean water.
Okay, any more questions? I don't see any in the chat. If you do have any more questions, please put them in the chat. No, I don't see any more. So if you have any, you can wrap it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.